So let's see.
Well, death is something we haven't talked about yet.
Yep.
Well, we've talked about death, like in that it shouldn't always be the option, but death is going to be a thing with your characters. And one thing I really believe, and I know these guys really believe, or I hope they do at least, or we've been playing different games. Death should always mean something. Mm-hmm. If your character, if you're the GM and one of your characters is going to die, it should not be because he failed his climb check and fell down the cliff. Unless that's somehow dramatically appropriate to your story, but that's usually an NPC's job, is to die
that's
meaninglessly.
The thing is, the player characters are the heroes of the story.
Yeah.
The heroes of the story, any story, are special.
And that doesn't mean they can't
something
die.
about them that is more interesting to pay attention to than everybody else in that world. That's why we're watching them.
Yeah.
So if that guy dies, it has to mean something.
It does.
Right?
And it doesn't mean they can't die. But it should be something that they have some input in and that is appropriate for their character or important. One game I actually love playing, we don't play it a ton, but is Dread. And Dread is played with a Jenga tower. You pull out pieces, and when the tower falls, that means your character dies. That's just what happens. So instead of rolling dice, it's like, okay, you want to do this skill. Make 3 pulls from the tower. But one of the options in Dread is that if you don't think it can happen or whatever, you can push over the tower, and then you get to decide what happens. I don't think I've ever had a character die without me pushing over the tower. Usually in some sort of dramatic sacrifice or to do something to save the rest of the group or whatever. Make your character's death important. Make it awesome.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's more interesting, right? Your character gets killed in crossfire trying to run from cover. Okay, that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Or your character heroically stands at the bottleneck fighting off the enemy while the rest can escape.
Die like Boromir.
Your character dies, but you're a big damn hero.
Yeah.
You're like, yes!
In fact,
that's awesome!
Not even Boromir. Die like Sean Bean.
Yeah. but not in that movie, that TV show with Ashley Judd where he gets blown up in the trailer.
Yeah, okay.
In a car bomb.
Just die like awesome Sean Bean.
Yeah. A lot of this comes down to trust. There was some murmuring when we said your GM shouldn't just arbitrarily kill you because you rolled badly. That's table trust. That's an issue where you have to talk. You have to talk about it. You have to make sure the stakes are clear. Everybody at the table has to buy in. There are times when the GM is like, I want to run a really dangerous situation here, but it's not the end. So what I'm going to warn you right now, I'm going to tell you right now, nobody's life is on the line today. Everybody will survive, but I'm going to take literally everything else away from you as we go if you are not doing well. So that way, the players all know, okay, we can be as crazy and as awesome and take as many risks as we want because we know we get to play next week too.
And that can come down to like some players will, and some storytellers are like, well, the rules stayed, and that's fine. If that's the game you want to play, that's no problem. Adhere to the rules. A lot of what we're advising you do is to bend the rules. Never break the rules because that creates distrust. But bend those rules a little bit. Feel free.
Yeah.
It's fun.
And one thing, sorry, go ahead. I don't remember who said it in our planning meeting, but it's awesome and it should be said. Player loss or PC loss does not equal player loss. Right? If your character, if something happens, if they lose something, if they are broken, penniless on the street, getting there should have been awesome. It should have been something the player feels good about. That's a lot of our stuff comes down to that. Your players should feel good while they're in the game. You should never be sitting there going, why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. Because that leads to, maybe I won't come next week.
Yeah.
And that is no fun for anyone.
Yeah, we go on to say too that players can and PCs can and should lose from time to time.
Yeah.
But players should always leave that table feeling like, yeah, I got my butt handed to me, but I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And PCs can and should die, but at the right moment. If you can't say to a character or to a player what is your character's last words, maybe your death scene is not as dramatic as you thought it was, because your character should have, if not an opportunity to say them, maybe nobody hears their last words, but they should have an idea of what that character's final statement is in that last moment.
Yeah. Well, and I remember watching The Matrix, which was a good movie.
It's too bad they didn't make a sequel to it.
Yeah, it's really too bad but maybe it was a good idea. Do you remember, who remembers I can't even remember her name now, was it Switch? The white-haired girl. She was not really developed that much as a character. Like, she had her moments, but for the most part, she followed everyone around. But her death When she looks up and says, "Not like this. Please, not like this." She was the most important character in that room to me. That moment, I didn't care about Neo. I didn't care about Trinity. She had her death. She had her last moments, and she was incredible. That's when she became an amazing character to me. And your character, your PCs should have that moment. Should have their, even if if the character doesn't want to die, and you know the character's a person. Yeah, that should still be an awesome scene for the player.
We had a bit more about stunts, but we're really close to out of time. So I want to say just sort of the most important piece of game mastering advice and also playing advice I was ever given, and I'd like to share it all with you, is be a fan of every other character. Be a fan. If you're GMing, the player characters are the most important people in the story, not necessarily in the world. Maybe they're just a bunch of coal miners, and it's a world of kings and ray guns. But this is the story you're telling. You're telling a story about coal miners. Those 3 or 4 or 6 people are the most important people in that story. Be a fan of those characters. And if you're one of the players, be a fan of everybody else's character. Always give everybody a chance to shine and contribute and be amazing.
Yeah.